Well, hello everybody watching at home. My name is Travis True. I'm programming manager for this year's Philadelphia Film Festival. Hopefully you've just had a chance to watch Kubrick by Kubrick. And we are lucky enough to be joined right now by Gregory Monro, who's the director of the film, who's joining us from France. So Gregory, thank you for joining us today.
It's my
Tonight.
pleasure. Thank you. Yeah, tonight.
Yeah.
Bonsoir. You say in French, you say bonsoir.
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 Well, I guess the first question that I have about the film is, where did it originate? Where did the idea originate for you? Did it come from these audio recordings of Kubrick?
Well, it's been a few years that I wanted to make a documentary or movie on Stanley Kubrick, but as you know, there's been quite a few documentaries, very good ones. So I really waited until I had, an idea or adding a new, I would say, a new perspective to Kubrick, meaning using his own words to build the movie and the narrative was to me the best option, because of course people who just saw the movie, some of them are great fans, maybe some of them don't know quite well Kubrick, but still they read or heard about him a lot, and a lot has been said on him, but he didn't actually say it. So that was the goal of it. It's not, meaning it's not, that movie is not to give new information, because you mustn't forget that these interviews that made film critic Michel Simon, he did 4 interviews with Stanley Kubrick. He was very close, not friend, but they entertained a nice relationship professionally. So to me, it really adds it humanizes Stanley Kubrick, and that's very, very important, because I was myself surprised the first time I heard him, because I said to myself, I was quite astonished. I said, "Oh, is that really Stanley Kubrick to whom I'm listening to?" Because I didn't imagine that voice for Stanley Kubrick, so I was amazed, and I really listened closely, because he was so soft voice, humble, New York accent. It was very funny for someone who lived there for so many years in Great Britain. So that was really my objective, was really to give him the word and to build a movie upon his feelings around cinematography, not only analyzing his films, because he didn't really like to do that, and I think that we can sense that, Michel Simon sometimes tried to pushes him, but also his viewpoints on cinema in general, on the craft, on the art of filmmaking, and also on the world, on human being. I think we really have the feeling that he had a really clear viewpoint on humankind that he injected in all of his movies. So that was really my desire for that movie, and I hope that people, of course, the audience, got that, because sometimes it's not very easy, of course. So when you could be surprised.
Yeah, no, but you're so right. I think something that's beautiful about the film is that he's this figure that looms so large for a lot of people, but people don't really know that much about him, because he was notoriously pretty private. But even that sort of created the sense that he was like this sort of like not human figure, but he was just a guy who lived with his family in the UK and happened to make these incredible these incredible works of art.
Yeah, he was he was a regular guy.
Yeah.
Really, he had a family life. He wasn't, everybody called him, so many things. That the problem is that so many things until today, I mean, so many people, they keep going with the legends, with the crazy guy, with the paranoid, with the, yes, he was tough at work, but like a lot of artists, but that's about it. He worked a lot, and he lived just really very normally with his family, his pets, kids, and his wife, and he saw he I mean he was always in contact with the world every day. He read the newspapers, he watched TV a lot, he called a lot of people every day. He was connected, and he received also, he made lunches or dinners with politics or scientists or other directors like Bertrand Tavernier, for example. So he wasn't that kind of guy. It's just that he didn't wanted to communicate too much with the, let's say, with the press or journalists, because he had a very bad relationship with them at the time. You know, press hasn't been very nice to him. So I guess that's it. Plus, I think he's probably was kind of not shy, but he had he didn't want to analyze everything in his movies, because that I mean, for him, and I think for a lot of directors, you know, what's in the movie, I mean, he said it all. So and now it's given to the audience, and the audience has to, you know, think about it. And of course, Stanley Kubrick's makes you thinking a little bit more than other directors.
Yeah, well, and it's really interesting hearing him talk about film, because I feel like I have this perception of him as this like auteur who's like has such a strong vision and is almost like in between sort of like traditional Hollywood film and more like avant-garde artistic filmmaking. But
Yeah.
he, even though he had that aspect to him, he was also such a craftsman and so tuned into the art of storytelling in a almost traditional way. It was almost like you can hear him sort of have this sort of foundation in classical Hollywood filmmaking, which I found a little bit surprising, just sort of knowing his reputation.
Yes, it's surprising. And then he didn't, you know, he was very well aware of that, and he says it at the end of the movie in the conclusion that someday someone has to break, you know, the narrative structure, probably because he thought that he didn't. And I think he didn't really, because all of his movies are built upon, I mean, I would say rather classical scripts, in the way of telling a story and the narrative, you know, with a beginning, a middle, and in the end. And it's always a rise and fall, of course, in his
Yeah,
movies.
and he talks
But
about
that's
conflict.
that's
Yeah.
the same, that's the same schemes all the time. So
Mhm.
yeah, he was as you said, you're right, he was in between. He belonged to the classical, because he was, you know, one mustn't forget. I mean, he also directed Spartacus, which was a big hit, but that wasn't him, because he didn't felt free as he was after Spartacus. But that was a good lesson for him, I think. So yeah, he just at a point from Spartacus chose to do something else, and he really wanted to do it his way and be as free as possible, far from Hollywood, which is incredible when you think about it today. And even at the time, he was the only one to do that. And today, even Spielberg or Chris Nolan wouldn't be allowed to be as free as Stanley Kubrick. Can you imagine that? So that's very rare. I think that's very specific of him, and that's why Kubrick probably keeps intriguing people.
Yeah, well, and it was also funny to hear him talk about the idea of doing everything from home in the situation that we're in now. Everyone's sort of like,
I regret that he passed 20 years ago, because really would have loved, not only me, but I think a lot of people, to ask him, okay, what are your feelings about what's happening at the moment in the world? Yes, he would probably go, well, you know, it's the same, it hasn't changed for me. But no, I mean, he would be, of course, moved about the situation, very sad and everything, and probably maybe influence
of course.
for new projects. Probably he was very well influenced for for the majority of his movies were at their time were influenced by history that just happened or happened just a few years before, all the
Sure,
time.
yeah, I mean,
So
political
so
activism.
maybe, yeah.
Yeah, but it is a funny model of working from home before everyone had to sort of
Well,
adapt.
you know, yeah, everybody does that now. They are not Stanley Kubrick, of course, and hopefully, because there can only be one Stanley Kubrick. But today, everybody can make movies, not like him, because he was his own studio and he was Hollywood himself. I mean, he you know, the studios. I mean, he decided everything, even the you know, the posters, you know, for the movie, for the publicity, commercials, and everything. And he decided of the sizes of the poster, where they have to be put in the cities, the translations of all the titles. He had really, and he had the final cut on that too, which is today won't happen anymore.
No. Well, and it's
No.
striking in the film too, because it's like you can obviously you can imagine toward the end of his life, toward the end of his career, once he'd made all of these classic films, being able to sort of have that stature and be able to sort of dictate, you know what I mean? But it seemed what was striking is seeing footage of people talking about him even early in his career that he already had that sort of like controlling is the wrong word, but he was already like very in charge of his vision and was already very particular about the way that he wanted to do things in a way that it's like I almost wonder like at what point did people sort of take see him and go like okay now he can sort of run with it. It's amazing that he was able to do that even so early in his career and that he had that sort of yeah.
Yeah, probably because he was well known even very young in Spartacus. He wasn't even 30 years old, but he was already doing that. So people of course liked it or didn't like it. I would say people on Spartacus didn't like it, Kirk Douglas or the producers or whatever, but he knew what he wanted. And the key word to me is really freedom.
Hmm.
It's so important, but not only for Stanley Kubrick, but when you are in the artistic industry, no matter if it's cinema or plays, opera, or writing books, paintings, photograph, anything creative and artistic, I mean, you have to be free. How come cannot you be free in your artistic vision? That's so important. I mean, that's the key of everything, and that's why I think Kubrick is really today amazes people. Yes, of course, intrigues people, sure, but I think that it's he was free, and I think that's a great lesson. The great lesson from Kubrick to learn that he was free until the end, and that everything is possible if you keep vision, your own vision. And of course, sometimes you get into conflicts, as he says. But I'm not saying that you have to be in conflict. But unconsciously, I think it's all about that too. But again, freedom is so important. It's so important. Look at today. We're
Hmm.
not even free to meet. So, oh my God,
Right.
let's talk about cinema. But we are resisting, and we found a way to talk about the art of cinema. So that's so very important.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, I want to ask you about your artistic vision.
Ah,
um, I imagine putting the film together, you could have gone in many different routes in terms of how you wanted to sort of lay out the different themes and the different segments. The film doesn't work in a sort of chronological order.
no, no.
It's a little more intuitive, but I wonder if you could sort of discuss how you did go about editing the film together and sequencing it.
Well, first off, I mean, it's a 2.5 year process to do that movie. For a documentary, it's very rare. I mean, on a famous celebrity, I would say, on the director, it's very rare to have that time to do it. But again, it's Kubrick. So yeah, basically, you have to. Documentaries are about choices and compromises. So I couldn't put 4 hours of interviews. I'm sure a lot of people, and I'm the first one to, I would have loved that, but it's not possible when you do a documentary, especially for either TV or theaters. I mean, you have to make choices. So I had to choose the right moments, the right thoughts. I would say thoughts, not sentences or words of Kubrick in order to build a specific narrative. And as you said, yes, it's not chronological because, a few people ask me, oh, why isn't there a Lolita and the killing in the movie? Maybe that was one of your questions. And I'm sure some people noticed that for a few reasons. Because first, I'm not doing a filmography. It's not about talking about Kubrick's filmography or Kubrick's life. It's not about that. And still, and he doesn't talk about Lolita and the killing with Michel Simon. So anyway, I didn't have the tools to do that. And secondly, and even though it has to match with the rest, Meaning that film is a crescendo in the spirit of the man, in the thinking of a man, of a director, filmmaker who is in the process of creating, and then who is in the process of thinking about of the themes, deeply the themes of his films, and going crescendo. That's why I didn't do it chronologically, because it had to match with his thoughts, and because his thoughts are really linked deeply with, I would say, the duality of man, or war, of course, war at war, and man at war, and man being a wolf or man. Basically, that's Kubrick under the iceberg, I would say. So I had to focus on these kind of thoughts, and try to choose or select his thoughts about that, and try to link them. It was a very, very, very long process, very difficult. It's not a I didn't copy anything and put it in the film just like that. I read a critic a few days ago. She said, "Oh, just it's just a patchwork, just of sentences, just put like that." I'm sorry, it's not. It's 2.5 year work. And if you read the book of Michel Simon, based upon these interviews, he transcribed these interviews. You will really, really realize that it really isn't that. I really thought about that. I spoke a lot with Michel Simon, and I had to be logical, and also honest, and I had to respect Kubrick's vision. That was the most important thing to me. So I wasn't thinking about the, as you say, about chronology or filmography or information. It's not an informative film. It's deeper than that. Really, it goes deeper. It's uh, but you have to think a little bit more, probably. So basically, I built it like that. So it was very, very difficult, because yes, I had other stuff. Yeah, he talks sometimes. I had 2 or 3 thoughts on Napoleon, for example, but it, he talks about Napoleon in the film, but not in that way, not on the project, but just on being. He was a little bit comparing himself to Napoleon. So, uh, but 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 it didn't go went with the logic of the crescendo, I would say, of that film. So I hope that people, hopefully, a lot of people see that, but some don't, and I question myself and say, okay, so what's wrong? Is that because people were expecting something else? I don't know. It's frustrating, because I would like to talk with with an audience, but you can tell me. I don't know what you thought about it. Was it easy for you? Were you expecting something? Have you read maybe Michel Simon's book, or I don't know?
I haven't, but it makes me. I actually was just on Amazon earlier today looking for a copy. I think it's out of print.
Ah,
There are
okay.
used copies available, but no, I think what I really appreciated about the film. I mean, I'm sure seeing a biographical, straightforward documentary about Kubrick, if anyone can make one,
Well,
um,
it has been done already. I mean, Life
yeah,
in Pictures from his stepbrother and producer Jan Aaron is brilliant. It's 3 hours. It's totally complete. I mean, you have everything, everyone, all the films chronologically, but you don't have Kubrick. You don't have Kubrick thoughts. You don't have Kubrick's viewpoint. So that was the only thing missing. So that was the only thing I could do. Really, I couldn't do it again. I mean, there's no point in doing the same kind of movies. So I really hope that one adds something new with his viewpoint to the other films.
yeah, I think it really
I
does.
really hope.
You did a beautiful job of sort of taking his words and through the medium of film, using clips and archival footage and interviews and things like that, sort of illustrating the points that he was making. And it did sort of, I mean, he's such an interesting director because I feel like he's someone who you don't think of in the same way as like a Bergman or a Fellini or someone where it's like you can watch a scene from a Fellini movie or a Pedro Almodovar movie or something and be like, okay, well, that's he's not working with like the same themes in every single film in an obvious way. But I think something that's really great about this film is that it does sort of actually, it makes it a little bit clearer what his sort of viewpoint was as a filmmaker. because I feel like his films can feel sort of so totemic. It's someone says earlier in the film, like he made the best science fiction film and the best
Yeah.
film and the best, you know, it's a little clearer, like what is Kubrick like in all of those films.
Yeah, they're all different films, all different
Yeah.
genres, but deeply, they're all the same because they are linked
Yeah.
thematically on
Yeah.
humankind. I think that's very important. That's why I think till today, and I'm sure in 30, 50 years or 100 years, I don't know, Kubrick will still be there because, and a reference, because he's the only one who could have done that kind of different films, genre films, and then you can recognize it's Kubrick because there is something you don't know what exactly, because sometimes it's unconscious in you, but you feel like it's still Kubrick doing that and talking about the same thing actually on man and humankind. And I just wanted, sorry, on the creative process, on how did I do the film, it's very important to notice that I think some people notice I haven't done, when you do documentary, of course you have archives, you can make talking heads interviews, and you have voiceovers. Of course, this is our grammar when we do documentaries. I didn't do that. I only use archives from A to Z. So that's very difficult, meaning because I had to build a narrative structure myself, or something logical that it can follow with with something that already exists. See what I
Yeah.
mean? It's it's a very difficult exercise. It's very rare to have that kind of documentaries. I mean, there's no, he is the voiceover, of course, but there's no voiceover, there's no talking head. I haven't done any new interviews. I mean, I really use the interviews from the time. It was very important to me to have the viewpoints also of either Kubrick at the time of his movies, but also of his actors at the time of his movies. It's not the same if you make interviews today or Ryan O'Neal or Malcolm McDowell, Marisa Berenson, whatever, or Tom Cruise. They you know, it was 20, 30, 50 years ago, so they won't tell this, they don't have the same feeling actually. So that was my point. Sorry for the for adding that, but it's very important to me, and for people who, I don't know if they saw that, but it's a totally archival film, so
Yeah.
which is
No,
very
I
rare.
was going to ask, and I think you more or less already answered this question, is, you know, why did you choose to focus solely on, you know, mostly on his words and on the films, and then also on these sort of limited from the time interviews and things like that. But yeah, if you want to just sort of elaborate on like, why was that important that it not be a more traditional sort of retrospective documentary?
Yeah, yeah, and again, it has been it has already been done.
Yeah.
So I didn't want. I mean, what's the point? I mean, it wasn't I think it wasn't logical with the spirit of what I wanted to do. I had Kubrick's voice. You feel very close to him. Personally, I felt close to him when I listened to him. The atmosphere, everything. I had to be logical with him saying these words and having these thoughts at the time he was having them. So if I had to have uh, other interviews to help, of course, the narrative and that he could respond to, etc., it had to be at the time. Really, it was very important for me. I mean, sure, other directors would have done, differently, but it was really a choice, really, to do
Yeah,
that.
no, it's what makes this
But
film.
it's kind of nostalgic, also, probably.
Yeah,
So
could be. Yeah, definitely fun to see Malcolm McDowell in his
yeah,
in the 60s. Well, did you ever sort of flirt with the idea of at least talking to Michel Simon, because he is still alive, and you mentioned that you had spoken to him, just not on camera?
we thought about it, but we had archives of him,
Yeah.
and that was sufficient. I thought about it, but we had sufficient information, and we could do it with that. So, and he was okay because I explained really all the process. So again, it had to be logical with all the rest.
Hmm.
Otherwise, it would have been a bit. The distance would have been different. Probably, I'm, I mean, I'm sure it would have been nice too, but it would have been too much distant. See what I mean?
Yeah, everything is
So
so different in hindsight when you have
yeah,
years
yeah,
of
yeah,
time
yeah.
to think about it and mull it over. Well, the one other element to the film that we haven't sort of discussed are those sequences that are interspersed, mostly of the spacecraft from 2001, but you incorporate different elements from the sets or production design of the different films. Can you just talk a little bit about that, how you put those together?
Of course, from the beginning, that idea really popped up in my mind because I had to find a way again. When you make a documentary, you have choice. I mean, you have to make some choices, and of course, the tools that I had are I could have done a lot of only with pictures or and clips or from movies because it's classical to do that. But I kept in mind the image of that room, that 2001 room, and I said to myself, I was actually, I was one day I woke up at 4 in the morning and I had that image. I cannot explain you why, but because I was thinking about the project, of course. And I said to myself, okay, I want to set up the interview and the whole film. I want to link it into that room. Why? Because for two reasons, to me, again, it's that room, even today, keeps questioning people. A lot of people ask them to themselves, okay, what is the meaning of that room? It's a mystery, it's a secret. It intrigues so many people. So that's the first thing. It's intriguing, like Kubrick's voice. And then it matches to me. I tried, but it's just my own interpretation. So again, I talk about my movies. It's a bit weird because people's perception are different. But some people saw that too, what I'm about to say. So I'm very happy, really, when people see that. That room really symbolizes for me as if you were inside Kubrick's brain or in Kubrick's spirit. So basically, it's as if you were really in that room with him or in his thoughts and like swimming in his thoughts and in that room where everything is linked. So that's why that room suddenly, of course, you have props from other films than 2001 who comes to in that room to link it. So it wasn't it's not an artistic, it's an artistic choice, but it's not just artistic. It's not just because I just wanted to rebuild, because we built it. Actually, it's a real set. The room of 2001. It's not it's the reason, really the deep reason is really because, again, to me it was logical with Kubrick's thoughts, Kubrick's brain, being into his head, being into his head. And again, in that room, plus that room which is so secret and mysterious as Kubrick was.
Yeah.
So for these two reasons, really, I really thought that would be the best option. It wasn't easy, of course, as you can imagine, but I had a great crew. I mean, I worked with probably the best people who just reproduced that room. It was really amazing. Really, I must say, it was an incredibly incredible shooting. Really, I have pictures of that, and I filmed a little bit for the making of. It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure there are a lot of stories about the making of that room.
Yeah.
It must have been hard to disassemble when it was all over too.
But I'm aware it's very touchy too. It could be risky. It could have been risky, or maybe it's risky. Or maybe some people may think that, oh, they don't get it or they don't see the purpose. But think about not having it and think about just doing it with pictures and movie clips. I don't know. You wouldn't have the same, I would say, immersion, your insight into Kubrick. It's
Yeah.
not the same thing. To me, again, it's my viewpoint. But
Well, I
voilà.
agree. I think they work really beautifully in the film. Well, before we
Merci.
go, was there a film of Kubrick's that maybe you liked a lot before you made the film that sort of fell in your estimation, or more likely, was there a film that you maybe didn't respond to as much prior to making the film that has sort of changed in some way in your estimation?
Probably, like a lot of people, probably Eyes Wide Shut, because that's the most recent one.
Hmm.
And I remember the first time I saw it 20 something years ago in 1999, I guess, in theaters. Like a lot of people, I was a bit disappointed because I wasn't expecting that. And I had the same kind of thoughts from people saying, "Oh, that's the last film of Kubrick. He could have done better for a last film." Well, first, he didn't know it was going to be his last film, so that's okay. And secondly, I think through times, time passing, but I think every Kubrick films have that. Today, you ask people who really didn't either like it really or like it a bit, Eyes Wide Shut, like other films of Kubrick, today they would say something else. They would say, they would be much more positive. And that today, to me, it's one of his best films,
Yeah,
really.
it
To
is.
me, it's one of, and Michel Simon would answer the same. I mean, we have in common, I think, the same really three favorite films with Michel Simon, which are Barry Lyndon, 2001, and Eyes Wide Shut. I really agree. They're all different, and I think they're really. I like The Shining too, but it's so very different from what he did before. It's so very intimate. So it was unexpected. And you have Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman. A lot of people were bothered with them because they were big stars at the time, or still are, but at the time they were a rising star. So probably that confused people, but really it's very deep. That again, it's a book adaptation from Arthur Schnitzler. It's a very slim book, a very short book, and the book is about a dream. It's a dream. When you read it, it's a dream, and when you know that, you don't see the. I haven't read it before I saw the movie, but I read it afterwards, and then when the process of doing that film. But I mean, I liked Eyes Wide Shut more. I mean, even 10 years ago, I liked it really more. It's just that, just answering your question, yes, Eyes Wide Shut, really, I considered that film really as really a masterpiece, one of Kubrick's masterpiece, really deeply, because it's, again, you have to think about it. It's not, it sounds easy. It sounds accessible, everything. But what he says deeply on human relationships, on thoughts, on all the, uh, it's very atmospheric. The looks, I mean, it's very well. I really love Nicole Kidman in that film. To me, it's one of her best role, really, with probably the hours at the time. So I really like that film very much. So
I agree. And yeah, now I want to go back and rewatch that movie right now.
we right now,
Um,
okay.
yeah, as
You
with
have
all
you
the things
have
on
3 hours.
the film. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Greg, for
Thank you.
making the film, for allowing us to share it in the festival, and for taking the time to talk to us.
Well, it
It's
was a
been a real pleasure.
pleasure, Travis, and I hope that the audience will like it. And et voila, well, long lives your festival, long lives cinema, long lives Kubrick, and long lives ourselves in that crazy
Absolutely.
world.
Yeah. Agreed. Amen to all of that.
Yeah, and keep safe, and thank you for doing all what you do, and keep going.
Thank you. Well, yeah, thank you for all that you do as well. Thanks again for joining us. Have a
Thank
great
you,
night.
Travis. Thank you. Have a great day. Bonsoir. Au
Bonsoir.
revoir. Au revoir.